Good evening, this is Mr. Wintermelon. In this lesson, we are going to learn about mutation. Not those mutation that will turn you into X-Men, but those mutation that causes disease. So, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe mutation that causes sickle cell anemia and Down syndrome, as well as name the factors which increase the rate of mutation. So what is genetic mutation? Genetic mutation is a sudden change in the structure of a gene or the number of chromosomes. What do I mean by structure of a gene? You can see that I have bracket base down there. In the next chapter, you will learn the structure of DNA, and you will learn that DNA have different bases. So bases are sort of code or instruction of a gene. If you can recall, gene actually produce protein. If you can recall, gene actually have the information to codes for protein. So if there's a change in the instruction, the normal protein might not be able to be produced successfully. As for number of chromosome is quite self-explanatory. It could be more chromosome or less chromosome. The example which we are going to touch upon on mutation to gene is sickle cell anemia. Why is it called sickle cell anemia? You can see that normal red blood cell will be biconcave, but a patient with sickle cell anemia, their red blood cell will look like a sickle. Other diseases caused by mutation to genes are like albinism, which cause the cells to be unable to produce the black pigment. In the case of cancer, it is not just mutation to one single gene. It is many genes, maybe 6 or 7. For example of mutation to chromosome, we are going to touch on Down syndrome. Sickle cell anemia is caused by a change in base, which is like the instruction of DNA for gene controlling the production of hemoglobin. If you can recall, the function of hemoglobin is to transport oxygen. This causes hemoglobin to clump up, resulting in the sickle shape. And because of the abnormal shape of the red blood cell, it will not be able to carry or transport oxygen as effectively, and it will result in a lower concentration of oxygen in blood plasma. Hence, it is a form of anemia. The sickle-shaped red blood cell is also more fragile, and they are easily damaged, and due to the shape, they might cause blockage in the blood vessel. So because of the sickle shape, when it is traveling through a V junction, the shape of the red blood cell might get stuck at the V junction. And as a result, the red blood cell might clump up at the junction, causing a blockage. However, sometimes having this sickle-shaped red blood cell might have an advantage. So this is probably not directly inside your syllabus, but nevertheless, it's a good example whereby a negative phenotype might have some advantage. So let's talk about malaria and sickle cell anemia together. Malaria is a blood disease transmitted by mosquito, something like your dengue fever. And most of the time, the parasite will destroy red blood cell. However, individuals who are heterozygous for the sickle cell alleles are more resistant to malaria. So there are 3 types of individual. Homozygous dominant, whereby they have normal red blood cell, but those red blood cells are more easily attacked by the parasite. Then you have those heterozygous individual So some of their red blood cell will be the normal biconcave shape, while a small percentage of their red blood cell are sickle shape. Because as mentioned, they are fragile, which is why it's not 50% biconcave and 50% sickle shape. Instead, the sickle shape red blood cell is smaller in percentage. And those sickle shape red blood cells are more resistant to malaria. While homozygous recessive individual, all their red blood cells are sickle shape and they don't survive that well. So in places where malaria is very common, being heterozygous for sickle cell anemia might be an advantage. So this is a good example whereby a negative phenotype might actually provide the individual with an advantage in the given environment. As for Down syndrome, let's take a look at this chiograph. Pause the video and look carefully to see whether you can find something amiss or something addition in this chiograph. Now, you might notice that, hey, there is something strange for chromosome 21. Because Down syndrome is caused by an extra copy of chromosome 21. So make a guess where this additional chromosome 21 came from the mother or the father? This additional copy of chromosome 22 is most likely due to an uneven distribution of chromosome during meiosis. That means the centriole is not doing its work properly, whereby an egg ended up with 2 copies of chromosome 21. Then you might ask, can it be meiosis of the sperm, which ended up with 24 chromosomes? Yes, it is possible. But it can occur in sperm, but the chance of the mutated sperm fertilizing a normal ovum or egg is actually low. Because you can have so many sperm, but only a few of them have 2 copies of chromosome 21. And on top of that, the mutated sperm have to fertilize the egg for the offspring to have Down syndrome. Very unlikely. So most of the time, the additional chromosome 21 is from the mother, which is why older mother have the higher risk of giving birth to a baby with Down syndrome. So having Down syndrome is actually quite terrible because of the lower mental capacity and so on. So what are the factors that can increase the risk of mutation? Now, it is worth noting that mutation actually occurs randomly, but at a very low rate. Normally during mitosis, meiosis, or when the cell is repairing the DNA. But some agents can increase the chance of mutation in DNA. What are they? What you need to know for your O-level syllabus is ionizing radiation and chemical. You do not need to know specifically the name of the chemical, but one example that we have learned before is tar that is found in cigarette smoke. But the important thing to note is you just have to write chemical for your answer in O-level. If they ask you, what are the agents that can increase the chance of mutation? Just write chemical, do not need to be specific and write tar. The other agent that increases the risk of DNA mutation is ionizing radiation. So there's different form of radiation, like your heat radiation. So to be more specific, just write ionizing radiation, which can damage the structure of DNA. And as I have mentioned, mutation can occur when the DNA is repairing itself. And since ionizing radiation damage DNA, mutation can occur during the repair. Some other factors which are good to know are like your viruses or ultraviolet light. Now, if you are a bit well read you might be thinking, isn't ultraviolet light radiation? Yes, you are right to say that ultraviolet light is radiation, but it is not ionizing radiation. So the classification is a bit different. Ultraviolet light damage your DNA in a different way compared to ionizing radiation, which is why I put there ionizing radiation rather than just radiation. But anyhow, for all intents and purpose, for your O-level, if they come out this question, what are the factors that increase the risk of mutation? Just write ionizing radiation and chemical, and you will get the 2 marks. And this will be all for the lesson on mutation.